lovelies, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad that you guys are here for another fun video. I'm Katie and you are watching my 31 days of Vlogtober, and we are on day number 24 now. So going off of yesterday's prompt, it was 1980s horror. So this guy right here. So I wanted to hear about your favorite movies that were introduced to the world back in the 1980s. So spanning the whole decade from 80 to 89. We're going to get into my picks here in just a couple minutes, but let's go ahead and start with my book recommendation today. And this is a little bit of a different kind of a book to recommend, but this is more geared towards kids, adolescents, preteens, and I absolutely loved this series. So I've said it before, I don't have any kids, but this series kind of came on my radar, and I really enjoy young adult books. My favorite series of all time will always be Harry Potter, but I also really love the Anne of Green Gables series, and those are both, you know, kind of attuned to a younger crowd. So I don't even know how I found out about this series. I think it was maybe a Goodreads recommendation or something like that, but I saw the first book and I got the audiobook, much like yesterday's book. I found the audiobook, listened to it, and absolutely loved it, and then fell down the rabbit hole and had to buy the other two books as well. So the book series I'm talking about is the Nightmares series, and this is Jason Segel, and I'm sure you know who Jason Segel is. So if you ever watched How I Met Your Mother, or Forgetting Sarah Marshall, or the new Muppet series, that Jason Segel. So he co-wrote this with Kirsten Miller, and it is just a great story. So like I said, there are 3 books in the series. The only 2 that I have in hardback is this one, and I have the second book. I got them kind of in a bargain deal from Books A Million. I think they had them in their clearance area. So I picked them both up. They're big, thick books, and I'm still waiting to pick up an actual copy of the third one, but I have the third one on Kindle. And I just think that they're such fun reads. Like I said, they're nice, thick books, and the edges are kind of cut weird. So you can kind of see that they're kind of miscut, so it's easier to kind of flip through the book. And they have these great illustrations in them. So let me see if I can find a couple of those. So you got this guy, got this little worm cop. Where's that other picture I really like? So if you're familiar with folklore and things like that, there's a picture of like a Baba Yaga type creature. I think it was chapter 20. I don't remember where it's at now. There it is. So the house on the chicken leg stilts. So if you know anything about Baba Yaga, that's what that reminded me of. But you know, when you're listening to the audiobook, you don't really get the illustrations. So that was a wonderful surprise when I actually picked up the hardcovers for this. But the story follows the main character, Charlie Laird, and his life's kind of in turmoil. Him and his sibling, their dad remarries, and they're kind of thinking that their new stepmom is a witch, and they move into this big, huge purple mansion, and it was their stepmother's family's mansion, and weird things go on in the house, and then he starts experiencing these nightmares. So every day when he tries to go to sleep, he has these nightmares, and as they progress, things start to become real, and it's such a cool premise. It's such a fun take on, I think, every kid's primal fear of having a nightmare. I mean, I think even as adults, we go through those moments where we've seen something that's unsettled us, or something's going on in our lives, and it just kind of plagues on our thoughts, and then it starts affecting our sleep. And so we've all had nightmares. We have all been able to experience that. But the way Charlie kind of has to battle his nightmares in order to get out of it and move past it is really exciting. And like I said, I absolutely adored these books. As a 36-year-old woman, I was like 34, I think, when I read them, but I plowed through them, really enjoyed them. Any way that you can get a hold of them, on audiobook or in an actual hardcover format, I definitely recommend you pick them up because they're beautiful. And if you have kids, definitely. My niece is 11. She's going to be 12 here in 2 weeks. And I think that these would be perfect books for her. She's not really into super scary things, and these books are not super horror related, but they do have some scary elements. So I think that if you're trying to get your kids involved with horror or to kind of breed a love for the genre, this might be a good step for you to take. So like I said, there are 3 books total, but I've just got the 2 here. And I really like the hardcovers. They've got, I don't know if you can tell, this really pretty like iridescent shimmer to them. They've got this like, I don't know, almost like a glittery quality to them. But they're beautiful books, beautiful stories, and I really enjoyed them. So that is my recommendation today, is Jason Segel and Kirsten Miller's Nightmare series. So let's move on to movie recommendations, because you know, we've all been talking about all these other decades, and so now we are at the 80s. And I think that this is the last one in the decade, but I kind of saved it for last because I think that it's so vast. There's so many choices that you can choose from in this decade, and I don't think you'd be wrong in any capacity. But you know, I wanted to talk about so many of them, and then this is really where we got really introduced to, you know, the Halloween franchise, where they, you know, started bringing us the sequels. Same thing with the Friday the 13th and the Halloween series. So Freddy and Jason and Michael Myers became our household names in the 80s. So you have to show love for the decade for that reason only. I mean, Halloween was 78, but all the new creations that came out in the 80s because of that series are special, and I won't downplay any of those. I mean, I know a lot of people like to poke fun at like Halloween 3, and I mentioned Halloween 3 yesterday, but I really enjoyed that movie, taking away the Michael Myers element, not being like, but see, I didn't see these movies when they first initially were released, so I guess I can understand fans' annoyance by, you give us Michael Myers twice, and then the third movie you completely strip him out of the whole equation. So I get that frustration, but when I finally got introduced to Halloween, I kind of knew that was coming, so I could kind of decompartmentalize it, I guess. And I found the movie still to be very enjoyable. It was a great premise with the, you know, technological witches, or however you want to look at it. I mean, they were brainwashing people magically through, you know, television and their ads. So I always thought that was really unique, and I just want to give a little nod to that movie first. But the other ones that I wanted to give super special nods to were, of course, A Nightmare on Elm Street, which brought us Freddy Krueger, and he is one of my very, very favorite characters of all time. I mean, in any genre, in any capacity, books, movies, TV shows, I just think Freddy Krueger is he's a brilliant character. You know, he came out of the gate initially as this terrifying, scary character, and as you got to know him over the sequels and the decades of getting new versions of the whole story, you got to see different sides of Freddy. So you get that truly terrifying angle, and then as it went on, he became more almost cartoonish and slapsticky and self-aware. And I know a lot of people, especially the horror purists, some of them get a little annoyed by that, but I feel like in order to keep a series relevant, you have to change up the dynamics sometimes. Like we talked about back with the Universal Monsters. You know, we got so saturated back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s that they were trying like mad to make them still relevant. So throwing in the Abbott and Costello versions and, you know, joint adventures, you know, with the Wolfman and Frankenstein or whoever it was, they had to find a way to make them interesting again. And I think that that's what they did with Freddy. You know, he was a terrifying character, but the more you got to know him, the more he also, I feel like, got to know all of us and was able to appeal to all senses of us. I mean, he still can maintain that sense of horror, but he's also clever and funny in an awful sense. I mean, when you think of this guy who's a child murderer and you can't help but almost feel endeared to him. It's a very strange dynamic. I'll never understand it. I should probably go to therapy about it, but I know I'm not the only person that feels that way. I just think that he is, I don't think anybody else could do a story the way that Wes Craven did with Freddy, and the Nightmare on Elm Street series kind of, ebbed and flowed over the years with the different, entries into this series. But I really love Freddy Krueger, and I'm glad that he is part of the horror canon, that he is one of the big three, that emerged from this decade. And now, we've brought in Ghostface, and we've brought in Jigsaw, and we've brought in, Chucky, and all these other characters that are our horror staples. So I don't think we'd be where we are in horror if it wasn't for Freddy Krueger. So that's my first pick, is for A Nightmare on Elm Street, that series. Specifically the first movie, but I got I got a big kick out of the whole series. And I'm also a fan of Freddy vs. Jason. I know, this is another one of those, she doesn't like A Nightmare Before Christmas, but she likes Freddy vs. Jason. I know, I don't understand it either, to be perfectly honest, but I do. I love the series, and that's all I'm going to say about that. So if you've not seen Freddy vs. Jason, you should. I think it's hilarious. Anyway, so my second pick was for... and it took me forever to see this movie. Like, I only saw this movie for the first time like 3 years ago. And that is the 1980 version of The Thing. So that movie, I think, premiered in 1982 and scared the living hell out of the audience. The practical effects in this movie are quite simply unlike anything I have ever seen before or since. They revolutionized horror effects, and I don't think they've been able to really capitalize on that since. I mean, there's so much CGI anymore, and they really depend on that to cause scares instead of these practical effects. The scene, the epic scene where the guy's stomach opens up and gnaws the guy's arm off, and the dog that kind of morphs into this alien. I mean, the whole point of The Thing is that it's this... Okay, so let's start back. It was from the movie The Thing from Another World, and this was a remake for all intents and purposes, and a lot of people don't know that, or they just kind of remove it far enough that it doesn't really feel like a remake, but it was. And the storyline is these group of people are stationed up in the Antarctic, and they're it's kind of like a science study program up there, and they uncover this frozen being out in the tundra, and it starts to thaw out and things start to happen, and it is just, first of all, so well done. Kurt Russell is absolutely insane in this movie. Like I said, I was not in the 80s when I first saw this, or the 90s or the 2000s. I mean, this was a 2010 first watch for me. So I had already seen memes of it, and, I kind of thought I was expecting, what there was to be scared of. And it still produced that genuine basal fear element, that you were so looking for when you go to see a horror movie. And this one really hit all of my fear nerves, and it was just amazingly done. It's got such a good cast. Like I said, Kurt Russell's in it. Richard Mazur's in it, who, if you don't know me and my love for Mr. Boogedy and Bride of Boogedy, he plays Carlton in those movies. And so seeing it as a 30-plus-year-old woman who has grown up with Mr. Boogedy, it was kind of funny to watch that, and I had his character in my head the whole time I watched it. So luckily that was able to kind of pull me out of the fear a little bit. But man, just, you've got to give it up for the special effects in this movie. If nothing else, the storyline is very unique and wonderful, but those effects will stay with you, I think, forever. Like, now that I have seen, and it wasn't just a meme or a short clip of the movie, I have seen that movie all the way through. It is it's a work of art, truly. And yeah, that piece of art is disgusting and terrifying, but oh, if you've not seen The Thing, that's it. That's my recommendation for today. So definitely drop what you're doing and go rent it, or just buy it, because if you're a horror fan, I'm pretty positive you're going to absolutely love this movie. So that's my recommendation for my movie today, is John Carpenter's The Thing. So let's go on to my TV show recommendation, and my television show today is the classic 1998 Charmed series. So this one went on for a couple years. I think that there were 5 seasons. Let me look through my Wikipedia just to double check. Where are we at? There were 8 seasons. There were 8 seasons. I was way off. Okay, so like I said, it premiered back in 1998 on the WB, and it went all the way through to 2005. And of course, there were change-ups, and if you watch the series, you know what I'm talking about. But the story kind of surrounds these 3 main witches. So you've got Phoebe, Piper, and Prue, and their last name is Hallowell. And so this Hallowell name is pretty renowned in this town, and their mother was a witch. And the girls discover this after their parents have passed away, and the power kind of comes to them. And so they all share this, it's called the power of 3. So each witch has a separate power. So Phoebe can, I think she can like feel people's emotions, and Piper can freeze things, and Prue is able to kind of flash and move different places, if I'm remembering correctly. I think that that's how that works. And it's been a long time since I watched this all the way through, but I catch it, it's on TNT in syndication, so it's always on. So if you ever want to watch Charmed, you can watch it if you've got a cable channel, and I think it's on Hulu Live. So I don't think Charm's ever going to go anywhere. And they did the remake version on the CW a couple years ago, and I did try to give it a chance. I did watch the first couple episodes, and I didn't find it bad. I just kind of lost interest with it. So if the the filmmakers start dying down a bit, I guess I'll go back and revisit it. But it was nothing so extraordinary that I couldn't wait to see it. So, like I said, I wasn't angry with it. It just wasn't something that totally pulled my attention. But this original series came at me at the perfect time. You know, I was I think a freshman in high school, or an 8th grader. Let's see, 1998. Yeah, I think I was in 8th grade when this came out. And this was on WB. So it was also kind of pinned at the same time that Dawson's Creek was on TV. And I was of that generation that was absolutely obsessed with Dawson's Creek. So, but the way it was set up on TV, where I lived, we didn't have it on our cable. You had to have an antenna in order to watch WB. So my parents would set up a TV out in we have a little hallway that kind of connected our kitchen to our garage. And so it was always cold out there, and but I did every Wednesday night. I would go out, I would watch Dawson's Creek, and then Charmed came on after Dawson's Creek. So I would finagle with the antenna. I sound like such an old person, but this was 1998, but I'm still dealing with an antenna situation, and I just couldn't wait for Wednesdays, because Dawson's Creek and Charmed Night was my favorite, and it was that way for years. I just absolutely loved both series. And this one was just so great because it dealt with these witch characters, but they were strong and they were powerful, but they were also sympathetic and caring and loving. The 3 girls that they had playing this were brilliant. Shannon Doherty plays Prue, and Holly Marie Combs was Piper, and then Phoebe was played by Alyssa Milano. So it was 3 people that I was familiar with. Maybe not so much Holly Marie Combs, but the other 2 I've seen, on Who's the Boss growing up, or Beverly Hills 90210. So they were familiar faces, and it was a storyline that I just absolutely love. I mean, you know me and my witches, I can't get enough of them. So the series itself is wonderful. They tackle a lot of different topics. There's, you know, I think there's episodes about leprechauns and werewolves and demons galore. So many demons in this series. But I just loved the fact that the witches were the sources of good. And so many times it's a different dynamic and witches are the evil characters. So I really loved Charmed for introducing good witches into my life in a more cohesive way. I mean, we had practical magic and we had The Craft and stuff like that came out, but this was a whole series. You know, we got to get so much of these people's lives, and I will always be grateful for Charmed for giving witches of the world a great view. And I can't, like I said, I can't say enough good things about this first series. And I think you should give the second series a chance if you haven't. I think that that's streaming. Both of them I think you can find pretty easily. So that is my recommendation for today. The wonderful series Charmed. And I know that during, like, over the years, things happened. Shannon Doherty left the series. So that created a new dynamic and brought in a fourth sister. And some people didn't like that, but they brought in Rose McGowan, who played the fourth sister. And I thought it was a different dynamic, but it wasn't a bad one. And it went on for several more seasons. And of course, I think it holds a special place in a lot of girls' hearts. So if you're like me, I'm sure you absolutely loved Charmed too. So again, like I said, that is my pick for today's TV show. So let's go ahead and move on to tomorrow's prompt. Let me grab that really quick. Katie's gonna love this one. So it is specifically Stephen King adaptions. So I want to hear about your favorite Stephen King inspired films. So it can be, you know, based off of one of his novellas, based off of one of his best-selling books. I just want to hear about your favorite Stephen King adaptation. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. And like I said, leave all your comments in the spot below. Let me know what you think I should be putting in my list, what's in your list, and we'll go from there. So I hope everyone's doing well. I hope you're healthy, and I will see you guys in my next video.